Hey guys, King of Charmander's here, and I bring to you possibly the cheapest, actually it is the cheapest meta pick in the Great League Remix. You don't need it, it doesn't need an introduction. It's the Floating Clownburb Altaria. It's tanky, it's tanky, it's tanky, and it has Dragon Breath. That's all you need to know. It's tanky and it has Dragon Breath. Anyways, Altaria, as you see here, is really good for the Great League Remix. It only takes 10k dust to get its second move, so it's your best budget pick as far as like meta if you want to go compete in the Great League Remix. As you see here, like I said, it's tanky. That's why it's really good, because it's tanky. It has high defense, high stamina. And with Dragon Breath is the most powerful dragon, well, it's the most powerful move as far as damage goes in the game. So one turn fast move does a crap ton of damage, and a lot of times you have seen, or if you haven't seen yet, you will see stuff get Dragon Breathed down. It's so powerful. One-turn moves are powerful because not only do they do a ton of damage, however, you can essentially, what you can do is, if your opponent's going to die to one Dragon Breath, one-turn fast moves take priority over charge moves. So, you probably know this already, but if you try to save your opponent, your Pokemon in the back, and cue a charge move, it won't work if you're going to die to one Dragon Breath. Yeah, that's how annoying it is. Anyways, it's super powerful because it has Dragon Breath, Sky Attack, and Dragon Pulse. It's a standard moveset. You can possibly go Dazzling Gleam to take out fighters. However, I don't see you getting there very often, so we're going to look at both variations. Anyways, let's get started. So Altaria, as you see here, here's the ppoke.com rankings. Please consider doing your pvpoke.com. So I'm going to slow down a little bit and give it a little more insight on how Altaria works in Remix. But as you see here, it's number 5, and for good reason. Very powerful in all positions except for the switch. So you don't want to switch in Altaria for several reasons. If you switch in Altaria, basically what's going to happen is you risk getting beat down by Bastiodon or Charmed down. Those are your two biggest threats. As you see here, Bastiodon, even Registeel gives you a really hard time when you get locked into it. Because Registeel was nerfed, you actually beat Registeel in the 2-shield. So you can actually beat Registeel with Altaria now. However, like I mentioned before, well, you could beat it before with Altaria, but like now it's a lot more dominant because Registeel was nerfed. However, that's why you don't want to use it as a switch. There's a lot of ice in here. There's also a lot of Charmers, and like I said, Bastiodon. Bastiodon can beat Altaria down shield. So be aware, if you see Bastiodon and you have Altaria in your team, you need to make sure you take out Bastiodon, for sure. As you see here, you do win. Altaria does very good against things like Weather Ballers. It does good against the fighters as well. That's why it's so powerful. It also pretty much walls Meganium. Meganium does not stand a chance. If you've seen Meganium against Altaria, unless it has a lot of chip, Altaria 9 times out of 10 will win that matchup. So again, you want it in the lead or closer. Don't use it as a switch. You could switch it into a positive matchup, like if you have it in the back, but for sure, do not use it as a safe switch. As you see in the lead, Altaria ranks at number 9. It's in the top 10 for good reason. Like I mentioned, it takes out the fighters. It takes out majority of the Weather Ballers, as in Pelipper and Altaria. Make sure you be careful of Alolan Ninetales and Abomasnow, though, as you see here. It also will lose against Wishcash in the 2-shield, ironically, because a Blizzard will ascend Altaria to Antarctica. I say this joke a lot, but if you've ever seen Altaria blizzarded by Daddy Cash, it's not comfortable. Yeah, that's what it is. But anyways, it's really good. It's really powerful in the lead, especially with the fact that if you have it in the lead, you lose the lead, you can pivot out and then possibly realign Altaria with a good matchup in the back. So if you're going to use Altaria, I would recommend you use it in the lead or your closer. And don't switch it into the lead. But it's really, really powerful against a lot of things in the Great League Remix just because of its tankiness and particularly its typing. Again, you don't want to use it as a switch. I'm not going to go over it too much, but if you want to, just for science, it's really bad as a switch for several reasons. Bastiodon, Ice types, Charmers, Registeel, Ice. End of story. As far as a closer goes, Altaria ranks at number 9, so it's still in the top 10, pretty much beating everything that I mentioned before, but the reason why as well is also beats a lot of other like things that switch into you, like Sableye, etc. And if your opponent is rocking things like double fighters, Altaria is a very powerful pick to have in the back. That's why you want to close out with it. If it's up shields, it can do fine. If it has energy lead, it can do some magic, but for the most part, you want Altaria on fighters or Meganium, or fighters, Meganium, or anything you'll see in the Matrix very shortly. So again, it's cheap, tanky as hell, does really well against the fighter meta in this cup. You just need to make sure you keep it away from all the things that can literally tap it down. Alright, now everyone's favorite part of the video, at least it's mine, the PvPoke.Mon matrix. This is how we figure out what beats what loses against what. And as you see here, I put, thanks to the new add and compare, well, this isn't new, but if you've used it before, the add and compare thing is really good, because what it does, it gives you a large spread of IVs. Here's Altaria this is Altaria with a decent IV spread, high defense, or no, this high defense, number 1, as far as like rank 1, and then you have a high attack one. Now, Altaria is one of those mons where high attack can matter. If Altaria reaches a certain breakpoint, and it can actually do a ton of damage with Dragon Breath if you have a max attack one. However, it's very specific. Without that bulk, you're still gonna die to Charmer. So just keep in mind, attack mon does, and attack weight Altaria does matter in some scenarios, but you'll see shortly. I have the Great League Remix meta to the right. We're gonna hit battle. And as you see here, IVs matter when it comes to Altaria, especially in the mirror. As you see here, a good IV Altaria will beat the other one in the mirror. So that's why you kind of want a good IV. You want the highest IV you can. It is cheap though, so if you want to build multiples, it's not going to cost you too much compared to something like a Registeel. But as you see here, like I mentioned before, it does really great against the fighter meta. Even beats Cresselia, even though Cresselia has Moonblast in the 2-shield. As you see here, Cresselia is a nightmare just because it has Moonblast. Moonblast does big damage against Altaria. As you see here, it still does like half of your HP when it lands, which is pretty nuts. Just how good Moonblast is. But as you see here, you can comfortably just farm it, just take out take out Cresselia in the 2-shield. You could take out, like I said, the fighters, the pseudo fighters you do very well. Elementals, like that's what I forgot to mention, is that dragons do very well against elemental Pokemon, like fire, electric, water, and grass. So as you see here, that's why you beat Diggersby pretty hard. A good IV Cresselia, like this, rank 1, can also beat Drifblim in the 2-shield. Now, this is also IV dependent as well. However, if you look at this, you can survive an Icy Wind. Barely. It'll do like half of your HP, but what happens is even if you're resisted, you'll live with like 1 HP, as you see here. But only 1 turn will flip this match. So, if they get 1 Hex through yours, or if it's a Bubble one, you're Gucci. If it's a Hex one, which most people are going to run, be careful. Because like I mentioned, if you get Icy Winded, it's gonna suck, because that's what flips the matchup is 1 turn. So you can be Drifblim though. You can also be, like I said, other Steel Fighters, Ferrothorn, just because it's Grass type. Ice types will obliterate you, so just be careful of that. Also, Shadow Hypno with Thunder Punch can also take you out. So just keep that in mind, that like you can beat the regular Hypno, but Shadow Hypno with that confusion damage plus Thunder Punch can take you out just because of the pressure. So you beat Haunter comfortably because it's glassy and because of Altaria's a tank, and you have Dragon Breath. And you're going to lose against the ice tanks. Anything that has ice is going to give you a hard time. That's why Jellicent Jellicent with Ice Beam is going to be really good against Altaria. Shadow Champ beats you down, and the reason is it has to land a Rock Slide. However, as you see here, if you call the Rock Slide, it's good, but if you eat a Rock Slide, like in a 1-shield, here's what happens. You basically die. It does 86 damage, that plus the counter damage will take you out. So Machamp is a little scary if you see it. You also beat Medicham in the 2-shield. This is the regular one though. So this is the original level 41. If it is an XL, which most people will be rocking, here's what happens. So let's assume that we have a really good XL. You put it over here and we hit go. If it is an XL Medicham, you will lose the 2-shield. Yes, so you will lose the 2-shield. Just keep that in mind. It can beat you just going straight Ice Punch. You win in every other scenario, but you lose the 2-shield. This is why Medicham's really freaking good. It can Ice Punch down in Altaria. You need to make sure, well, and if it does get, you need to be very careful when you time it, because what happens, if they get a counter through, it makes the matchup even worse, because as you see here, 1 turn will flip the scenario. So if they get 1 extra, you don't want them to get a Dragon Breath on you, but don't make sure you time it correctly. But as you see here, you will lose this matchup, so just be very careful. As far as Mew goes, Mew's also, you beat Mew, just be careful, because if you're using a Mew in this meta and it has Ice Beam, it's gonna suck. You also beat Munchlax, Obstagoon, Registeel. This is what I mean. You can beat Registeel in the 2-shield. You also beat Sableye in the 2-shield. You should be able to beat it with the other ones too. I'm guessing it's because Sableye hits return, but like you beat Sableye pretty comfortably in the 2-shield scenario, just as long as you don't eat a return. If you eat a return, it's basically like Machamp. If you eat the big nuke move, it's gonna suck, because then they could just farm you, they can just hit you with foul plays until you die, and then Shadow Claw you down. And you beat a majority of the other fighters, as well as grass types. As you see here, you beat Shadow Victory. That's all you need to know. So good against Shadow Victory. Also, the high attack one here's where the high attack one matters in 2-shield. You generally beat a lot of things, however, you can lose against a lot of matchups if you don't have a high IV one. As you see here, attack weight only pays off in essentially the Vigoroth matchup, where you can beat Vigoroth anyways if you have a good IV one. As you see here, good IV Altaria at rank 1 will be able to beat you barely by 1 HP. So it's not reliable, however, you can still beat it. Again, if you have a high IV attack one and you see a bunch of Vigoroths, this is where you can flex your attack weight Altaria, but like I said, it's a very specific matchup. So I'd rather, honestly, I think high V is a lot better. So that's the 2-shield, and we're going to go into the 1-shield. As you see, 2-shield very strong. In the 1-shield, this is where it gets really interesting. As you see here, high attack Altaria beats high IV Altaria in the 1-shield. Just because Dragon Breath damage plus Sky Attack damage, etc. does a ton of damage. You'll still beat a majority of the fighters. However, the 1-shield is where it gets really scary, because with this, with the 1-shield, you'll lose against Shadow Champ. Yeah. So it's actually puts you in more danger, because then if you shield the Rock Slide, if you don't shield the Rock Slide, you die. It's that simple. So Shadow Champ can still be very scary. You pretty much lose to pretty much everything, the same thing in the 2-shield, and you beat everything that's very related in the 2-shield as well. So nothing really flips as far as it. You still beat a majority of the same matchups in the 2s to the 1s, basically a majority. So nothing really changes in the 2-shield and the 1-shield. Still pretty much the same thing. You see Ice Pokemon, you run. You see Jabber, you run. You see Rock Slide, you run. It's that simple. Well, if you see Rock Slide, you shield. If you see Smackdown Bastiodon, you run. There you go. Anyway, so if we go to the zeros, as you see here, this is the second position where Altaria shines. It's either the lead or the closer. As you see here, if you get the mirror, whoever wins CMP generally wins, but if you have an attack weight one, you'll beat the mirror. Which I wouldn't recommend anyways, because the matchups you flip, having a higher IV one, as far as rank goes, is a lot better than the attack weight one, in most scenarios. And as you see here, this is where it gets a little dangerous, because this is where you'll start losing things. You'll lose against a Rock Slide Thunderbolt Deoxys defense, because Rock Slide the Rock Slide damage adds up. Crystalia's Moonblast will yeet you to the next dimension, and as you see here, you just don't have a chance against anything that has an Ice-type charge move, or is an Ice-type mon in general. You still beat the same matchups you do in the 2 to 1s, but you drop a lot of matchups. So be very, very careful, because yes, you beat Medicham, yes, you beat Meganium. Where Altaria's strength really relies on is the fact that it beats the fighters so hard. It will beat most of fighters except for Vigoroth, because if Vigoroth wins CMP, Vigoroth wins CMP, but if Vigoroth like revs up and it gets counters through your charge moves, those body slams hurt and will add up. But other than Vigoroth, you beat a majority of the other matchups. Just keep in mind, like, you can kind of just like get blizzarded by Wishcash, and then you die. So just be careful. With Altaria, it's a really tanky and it's really powerful, but you're prone to getting baited out or get hit by a big nuke move and you die, especially Blizzard. However, if you are up shields, this does really good for you, because if you are up shields, here's what happens. If you are up shields, you can flip some of those ice matchups, which is why, like I told you before, you can kind of leave Altaria. Well, I actually didn't say this before, but if you leave Altaria with shields and they're in the zeros, you can flip a lot. Well, a lot of Pokemon flip things, but Altaria having that double ice weakness, you can flip some things that, for example, like Abomasnow. If you have it, you can beat Abomasnow. If you have a shield in the 1-0s. In the 1-0s, you also are able to take out you'll take out a majority of other ones. You still won't be Bastiodon. You won't be Bastiodon, you won't be Clefable, you won't beat the ice tanks. So be very mindful, especially Bastiodon. It's very dangerous against Bastiodon, because with Bastiodon, here's what happens. You essentially lose multiple scenarios. Well, you pretty much lose almost every scenario. Unless Bastiodon already has chip damage on it, the likelihood of you winning the matchup is like no. So just be very careful, because I can foresee Bastiodon running around a lot. As you see here, 1-0s, you beat a lot of things, but again, if anything has ice, it basically it still can beat you. or if it drops rocks on top of your head like Melmetal. So that's why this is where IVs also matter a little bit. However, these are very specific. A 491 rating isn't bad. So you should have chip on Regirock. If you don't and you're in the 1 to 0s, just be really careful. But because anything with like a 500 rating is so close that even, yes, you win, yes, you lose, but like it heavily depends on what's happening in the battle. As you see here, you blast through a majority of the meta. This is where you can be a little comfortable with Wish Cash, because as long as you don't get hit by a blizzard, you're fine. You're fine. Just don't get hit by a blizzard. That's all you need to know. But as you see here, you'll still lose against the Charmers, and you'll still lose against Bastiodon and the Ice-type users, as well as things like Melmetal, even if you're up a shield. So if you see that, take it out as fast as you can. In the 2 to 0s, you still lose against the Charmers. You'll beat everything but the Charmers and Bastiodon. As you see here, attack weight Altaria also loses against Dugong, but if you end up in this scenario, yeah. But you'll beat a majority, like I said, you beat a majority of it. You can beat Lapras in the 2 to 0s, but this is very dependent on, like I said, anything that has close to a 495 or a 500 rating like this. It's very, very dependent on how the match goes. So, again, just be very mindful that Charmers and Bastiodon, you need a run. It's that simple. If you have shield advantage, as you see here in the 2 to 1s, it's still not comfortable because Ice, like, generally the same thing. Ice, Bastiodon, Ice, Rock, anything you're weak against, Charmers, run. Other than that, you beat a majority of the meta. So Altaria, that's why Altaria is still very strong. Unless it's like specific typings, or rather, a good way to remember it, if it's weak to it, run. It's that simple. If you think it's a blizzard, shield. Alright, so if you're going to use Altaria, it's best used in the lead or the closer. As you see, we have Altaria here. Altaria actually, okay, so here's the funny thing. Altaria actually gels well with Registeel. Registeel covers the Charmer weakness, and it also covers the Charmer weakness and the Ice weakness, just because Steel beats Ice, and Focus Blast, Registeel has a ton of coverage. As you see, this core is very powerful. Well, it's powerful in Season 1. Basically, Season 1 meta is Great League Remix, plus XLs, and newer Pokemon that weren't available back then in Season 1. If that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Anyways, as you see here again, Registeel and Altaria do gel together very well. And I think one of the teams I put in here was Deoxys Defense. It also gels well with Deoxys Defense, as you see here. Just because Deoxys Defense, again, can cover the Ice type, and it can also pressure Charmers, just because it has a lot of bulk. As you see here, very strong. So they operate together very well. If you put these three together, they do they're super strong. Registeel, Deoxys, This is a very Season 1 meta team. Altaria, Deoxys Defense, Registeel. Well, it's still a super meta team to this day, just because all these three are super meta. As you see here, this team does very, very well with a very low threat score. So if you want to go basic, Altaria, Deoxys Defense, Safe Switch, Registeel Closer, that's pretty good for you. But as you see here, you want Altaria in the lead, in my opinion. You can leave it in the back, but the risk of you locking into a Charmer or Bastiodon is super high. So that's why I don't recommend you leave it in the back. It's super strong, but leaving it in the back is dangerous, just because there's a lot of things that can beat you in the back. If you have some crazy dude using using Wish Cash and it blizzards you in the back, it's gonna suck, because I don't know how many times I have to tell you, like, if you get hit by a blizzard, you die. It's that simple. So just be very mindful of that. But again, you can put in the back, just make sure Altaria has double coverage like you see here, because it really needs to be careful of those Ice types, because Ice types in the Great League Remix are very, very good. With the only thing really keeping them from contention are Bastiodon and Registeel. Alright, and that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this really does help you out. Again, Altaria is a cheap pick, and if you probably already have one, it's still really good. Now, the only reason that Altaria is not as oppressive as other things, and why I give it, is just because there's a lot of ways around it. Rock sliding, blizzarding, and Registeel and Bastiodon and Charmers are running really good in this meta. So that's why, it's really good as far as a budget pick, but you have to be really mindful and careful of if you're used to using it, you already know the weaknesses, so I don't have to tell you. Just make sure you keep it away from said weaknesses, and make sure that you can pivot away from, and make sure you shield the right things and pivot away from really, really bad matchups. That's really what you have to do. Other than that, Altaria is still really good. I would lean more towards high IV than high attack. High attack Altaria is good, but it's so specific that in Go Battle League, especially the Great League Remix, you just want the high rank one. High rank one will carry you far. Attack one's cool, but that's just, it drops more matchups than it would giving you a high IV one. Especially since you're not in a tournament or anything like that. But Altaria is very powerful, again, very cheap. 10k dust, really, really good. I prefer it in the lead. You can put it in the back, just don't switch out with it. Hopefully you guys are doing well on your Go Battle League sets. If you haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe. And I will see you guys on the next video with more Great League Remix content.